Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to the Retro Wrestling Room. We are here with a very, very special guest today. We have somebody who was in both the Cruiserweight Classic and the Dusty Rhodes Tag Classic in WWE. He is a current dragongate roster member, the Hong Kong Cool Star. We have Ho Lun in the booth today. How's it going, my man?
Good morning, Ben. Thanks for having me here.
That's okay, no problem at all. We mentioned in the little intro then that you've really made Dragon Gate your home these days. I think you've been there about 5 years now. What
Yeah,
makes what makes
it's
Dragon Gate
5 years now.
special to you?
I was here since 2019, and it was supposed to be a short trip, but then I've been staying here since then.
So what makes Dragon Gate so special to you these days?
Um, when I first start watch wrestling, um, of course I start watch WWE, WWF at that time. Um, I trade VHS tape like a lot of people do. I don't know if you did that in the past, like 20 years ago. When you want to watch wrestling, you have to buy VHS tape
Yeah.
from, some source in the US. I did that, and one of the Japanese company that I've been watching so much is Dragon Gate. They call it Turoemon in the past. So it's been so many years until 2018. Dragon Gate decided to tour in Hong Kong. They have a Hong Kong tour of 2 days during the summer. Um, we were at that time I was the promoter for HKWF, so I provided the ring and also wrestle for them. For a couple of times until 2019, they said, "Ho ho, what about you come down to Japan and tour with us for 3 months?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." Did 3 months and call back for another time for 3 months. And then from there, I become a regular. And then actually, I have my contract signed earlier last year.
Amazing. So, like you said, about 5 years now. So was Dragon Gate well, even Japanese pro wrestling, um, did you get a lot of it in China, like when you were first getting into wrestling?
When I first get into wrestling, of course, like a lot of other wrestlers, Japan is one of my goals to wrestle here. I actually did my first Japan tour back in 2012 with Zero One.
Hmm.
It was a short trip, like a couple of months. Did that and was happy. Um, I came back again to Japan for a couple of times, 2014, 2016, and then but all this trip, right? I haven't been, doing one match, already my goal achieved. You know what I mean? Um, I have never think about, stay in Japan long time, wrestle here as a regular roster until I came into Dragon Gate. I mean, the promotion, everyone in the back was really, really friendly. Um, they put me in a unit, Kung Fu Masters, like 3 years ago. And then from there, I've been doing a lot of things, picking up a job as a commentator as well.
Mm.
And the last 2 years, I have been the person in charge for the Dragon Gate USA and Dragon Gate overseas stuff. So it's been picking up a lot now.
When, like you said, then I was going to mention it later on in the podcast, but you've mentioned it already with the commentary side that you've gotten into within the last few years. Um, how much of a how big a change up is it for you to start to now do the commentary side of the action as well?
Um, English is probably not my first language.
Mm.
Well, I do speak English, but not in the native levels. The Dragon Gate wrestling is famous for its fast pace,
Hmm.
So sometimes when I first started, like 3 years ago, um, it's so confusing in my head because I can see action going on in the ring, but then my brain can't process it because
Yeah.
it's an English commentary. My first language is Chinese. So it took me a few times um until I get familiar with this. No, so now it's so much better now. But still a lot of things that I know myself is gonna improve.
When you were a kid, even before getting into wrestling, you actually started in judo. There was a story behind that. I think you actually thought, did you actually think you were going to wrestling classes at that time?
Well, I asked my mom to bring me to a wrestling class. That was so many years ago. That was almost 30 years ago. But then I grew up in Hong Kong. There's no wrestling in the whole of China. But strangely enough, my mom actually said, "Yes, I'll bring you to a wrestling class next week." So I went to a class. There's no ring there, just some the judo padding. Um, you know. But then I start learning bumps and all the rolls and until a few years, why are we wearing the same kind of, how do you call that uniform? The judo
Gi.
suit,
Yeah.
the gi, yeah. And then I find, okay, that's judo.
Yeah.
That's judo, what I'm learning. But the good thing is a lot of, basic technique from judo, the rolling, the bumps. At the later time, I start learn wrestling when I was 18. It gave me a lot of advantage. The rolling, the bumps is
Hmm.
basically really, really similar.
So I guess even though it wasn't quite what you had envisioned in this training, it did kind of brace you a little bit for, say, the bumps and things like that.
Actually, a lot.
Mm.
I remember when I was in that judo class, a lot of my classmates are so much bigger than me. Um, I was one of the skinniest boy when I was in junior school. Um, Told me they get thrown around every week, feeling headache, the body ache, everywhere I feel painful. Um, so 10 years later, 18 years old, when I get into the wrestling ring, this is the feeling is so much similar.
Mm. When you then did start actually wrestling training, it was with a wrestler called the Slam. He started training you there. How did you first get in contact with him to actually start wrestling training?
That was about 2003, where we actually start using the internet.
Mm.
In the past, without the internet, we can only go outside the sports center and take a pamphlet, a leaflet that our judo class every Monday and Tuesday, things like that, right? So 2003, when I start using the internet, um, that was still the landline dial
Mm.
internet. When you use the internet, you can't use your phone that time. I don't know if you go
Yeah.
past that generation. So I searched for, what's the nearest wrestling thing happen in Hong Kong? So there's nothing in Hong Kong. There's a city called Dongguan, which is about,
Mm.
it's not far away. It's about like probably 100 miles away from Hong
Mm.
Kong.
Nice.
So this place called Dongguan. Um, Lam, who was an exchange student in Korea, uh, not wrestling student, I mean like real school, university student uh, in Korea. He received some kind of training in Korea for about a few years, came back to China. Think he has the same thinking then that a lot of people do. He wanted to be a wrestler, but there's no wrestling in the whole of China. So he set up a ring in his neighborhood and start doing some training and call himself CWE, China Wrestling Entertainment. And that when when I got this information from the internet, it's only probably 3, 4 months since he started. So I became one of the first batch of students of his, travel every week from Hong Kong to Dongguan to did some training, and here I am.
You started the Hong Kong Wrestling Federation around 2009-ish, around that time?
2009 was our first show. We actually start a training center 2007.
Right.
Um, so 2003, I went to Dongguan with the Slam. If Slam can set up a ring in his neighborhood, after that, he actually set up a ring on his rooftop, the house rooftop. If Slam can do that there, maybe I can do the same thing in Hong Kong. But Hong Kong is like a city. We don't have a suburb area where we can put a ring in a rooftop. So we rent a warehouse, an industrial warehouse to put a ring in. So there's no air conditioning. It's so hot in the summer, 35 degrees in the summer. The window is like so small. There's no wind at all. So in the inside, it's probably 40 degrees. Um, but we start training there. We train ourselves. We use some of the slams training technique that, we gather 10, 20 people coming in. A lot of people come in like 2 weeks and then they find out they don't like it and they leave. But there are like 10 people that stays, who is still staying right now, 20 years later. Um, yeah, we start that for 2 years until 2009. Um, we thought maybe we can do a show here. Um, this is not a big, um, big warehouse, but we can actually put in 50, 60 chairs over there. So we market it online using Facebook, stuff like that. And actually 50 people show up and make it so full. Although it's so hot, we bought a few like big fan over there,
Yeah.
make more circulated, but it's still hot in the outside. I remember it's June, it's in the middle of the summer. Um, Everyone is sweating. The wrestler is sweating, of course, and the fan like sweat like so bad. Um, that's how we started, and we start doing show every month in our training center.
Mm. So, how hard was it for you to actually start out from scratch?
Um, I mean, okay, I like wrestling since I was a kid, and this is something that I wanted to do. Um, but if there's none, then I have to make my own, is it?
Mm.
So Slam actually gave me a lot of inspiration. I mean, it's only his rooftop and he can set it up in the rooftop and make it happen. Then we have more resource in Hong Kong. Maybe we can do that too. I remember the first ring that we had is so hard. There's no wrestling ring supply in Hong Kong. We found a ring supplier, but he did boxing ring. He said he can do wrestling ring, but the ring come in is not the same thing. But it's already here. We have to. This is the only thing that we've got. So we actually bumped there like a concrete hard ring for 2 years until we get an actual ring.
I mean, the difference for people who don't know, the difference between a boxing ring and a wrestling ring, even though they look similar, they are very, very different.
Yes, it is. And 2009, 2010, we did that in the training center until 2010. We actually closed down the training center. So when we closed down, I thought maybe it's time for me to travel somewhere to see what the real world look like. I came down to Coventry. I went to a training school. Actually, not in Coventry. The wrestling school that I attend is in Swindon.
Mm.
They call 4FW. I trained there. I remember the first session, I was so nervous. I trained by Slam. I trained myself for so many years, for 5, 6 years now. And I don't know what my standard is. Maybe I was really bad, or maybe, I was up to the standard, but lucky enough, the first session went well. And I actually able to, go on and on off with the British dude. So after like 3 months of training, I actually get called to start doing small shows. Those kind of shows, small, not like big shows, like smaller shows. A lot of kid crowds, mainly in the Maitland, Birmingham, Wolverhampton, place like that. And that's the moment that I thought, maybe I can make this my career. Um, Also, at the same time, I see what a wrestling ring looks like. So I went back to Hong Kong after 6 months and using my memory. So I tell the welder guy, okay, do this. I don't have the dimension. I just use the memory that I got while setting up the ring and to ask the welder, okay, weld this same ring to me. And then he actually did that. So we closed down the training center in 2010, right? Then went to the UK for 6 months, came back to Hong Kong, then ran a bigger sports center, put that ring on, and run our first show called Winter Fever. We actually draw like 150, 180 at that time, that 2011. That's how that's how I started, and that's how I start having this idea of doing wrestling full time.
You got the call to go to WWE in 2016 for the Cruiserweight Classic, which kind of picked the best cruiserweights from all around the country, well, all around the world. I beg my pardon.
Mhm.
Um, who actually got in touch with you at that time to become part of that tournament?
It was actually 2016.
Mm,
WWE is trying to start a tryout in Shanghai. So me, along with three other guys from Hong Kong, we are called up for that tryout. That was William Regal who actually in
mm,
contact with me. We did that tryout, and then at the same time, I was told that there will be a cruiserweight tournament. They don't call it Cruiserweight Classic at first. They call it
mm,
a World Cup kind of
mm.
cruiserweight wrestler tournament, and asked if I'm interested to do it or not. I said, "Yeah, it's the WWE, right?
Yeah.
I have to take that, right?" Um, Actually, I said yes, and after like 3, 4 months, there's no feedback at all. So I was like, okay, maybe it's no feedback. But then I actually got that email. Then they start, okay, Ho Lun, let's start booking your flight and work out your visa and stuff like that. So that's how I started. At the same time, I did that trial in Shanghai, and I think they like me. I remember William Regal was there, Matt Bloom was there.
Mm.
Uh, so that trial is very special, Shanghai trial. So the only person who have actually pro wrestling experience were me and the three other guys from Hong Kong. The rest of them are athlete from different background. They even got like basketball athlete, boxing athlete, bodybuilding athlete, all that. Um, they pick a few guys, me as well, for the Cruiserweight Classic. Um, yeah, this is how I start my journey with WWE.
What was your experience like with WWE? How much do you think you picked up and you learned while being, say, at the performance center working with WWE?
The WWE, the um, the most important element that I've learned is to during my WWE run, as a performer, is talking on the microphone.
Mm,
Um, and wrestling in front of so many cameras. That was 2016, and at that point, I have about 8 years of experience, but most of my experience were wrestling in a crowd, sometimes small crowd, sometimes big crowd, but none of this involve a lot of talking or involve a lot of camera
mm,
being there. Also, uh, I have been a promoter for so
mm,
many years, and being in the WWE actually give me more idea of how to promote a show. For example, that's what I said, all the camera angle, the lighting, the style, and the attention to details about, okay, this show, at what minute you have to do what. And this can't be over how many seconds. It's how much detail they have in the WWE. It actually give me more knowledge of that, and that experience, that experience going through WWE, the producing, the details actually helped me a lot in my career in Macau. I actually produced a few shows in Macau during 2000, after my NXT run, 2018, 2019. I did a few shows in Macau and Malaysia that most of them, not most of them, all of them are TV shows. And it's in front of a big crowd. You know, Macau is the Las Vegas of China.
Right.
We did a big theater show, 4,000 people in the crowd, and so many cameras. And the live stream over there was like over a million views. Um, Without my work experience in WWE, I have no way to, make that show happen.
Do you think going to the WWE, not only was it, a good experience for you and it helped you within your career, that it translated then back to the scene in China? Do you think it had a big effect?
Yes, I do. Um, Actually, not just China. I mean, being having exposure in WWE, um, build my brand, build the whole Ho Lun brand. As I said, now I'm in charge of the overseas relation for Dragon Gate. Um, we were able to pull off a Dragon Gate USA show this year. Um, Last year as well, we sent a couple of talents to the US, and work for some matches. Um, I am able to do this because of my WWE run. This is what I believe. And then that builds a brand for Ho Lun. When Ho Lun send an email out and they know, okay, Ho Lun, I've seen him somewhere in the Cruiserweight Classic. Oh, and now he's worked for Dragon Gate too. So it's a double advantage. Dragon Gate is famous for the Dragon Gate USA back 10 years ago. The height, the fast pace, the wrestling, and people already love it. But for talent relation, if it goes through Ho Lun, the brand that WWE gave me, the branding power that I have, that's a lot of it came from there.
Do you think um these days are you kind of growing into that kind of promoter, booker kind of um job role more so than a wrestler, or do you still consider yourself a wrestler that does that kind of bit on the side?
I always consider myself a promoter more than a wrestler, to be honest.
Okay.
Um, I started wrestling in Hong Kong so many years ago. At that point, I was like 23, I think.
Mm.
That's when I started. And then from there, um, I also produced a lot of shows around China, Shanghai, Chongqing, Guangzhou, a lot of places. Um, but without the ability of wrestle, I think both wrestling and promoting combined becomes me. That's what I
Right.
thought. If if I don't have the ability to wrestle, then the promoting itself would be more difficult. And at the same time, if I can only wrestle and I can't deal with all this issue about producing, that won't make me today. You know what I mean? So it's more of two stuff combined. But I would say my strength is more wrestling promoter than the wrestling wrestler.
Right. When you were in the US, you also got to perform for the other biggest company within the US. You had a match for AEW as well against Sammy Guevara. What was that experience like? Going to AEW and seeing their setup as well.
Um, that match was happened, or I think about 3 years ago when they still have this TV program called Dark. I think it
Mm,
doesn't exist anymore, right? Um, at that point, I was having a 4 months tour in the US. At that point, I didn't have that. I didn't even thought of doing AEW. I just message people, whoever I know, and see what other opportunity you got. I'm here for 4 months. I wrestle a few promotions, like like really main promotion in the US, like GCW. They're one of the biggest independent wrestling company. I also wrestle for MLW. Um, these two are the one who I worked with for so long. But AEW, I didn't. But then I actually messaged one of my friend. I've known him for a long time, Sanjay Dutt,
mm,
and he is now a producer for AEW. And I said, I'm in Florida right now. If you got any opportunity in Florida, let me know. They came back to Jacksonville one weekend and then said, "Oh, you want to come down Jacksonville?" And then I said, "Yeah." It's about 2 minute drive from 2 minutes to 2 hour drive from where I am. I was in. So I was there. He didn't promise me anything. He said, "Just come in, bring your gear, or we'll see what we can do." And then once I get there, I still don't know what to do. I get there, get in the backstage, no one tell me anything. But then AEW, there's a lot of people that I've known for a long time. So, it was actually happy enough to just meet all these old friends, shake their hands, see how they go, catch up about what. Didn't expect a lot. Then I see the board. There's a white board, um, like in front of the Dorera. And then it said Ho Lun versus Sammy Guevara. I was like, oh, okay. I think I have a match then.
mm.
That's how I find out I have a match. So I did that, come back and all good. Went there the next day. Okay, nothing happened the next day. So, but it's good enough. It's a great experience. Wrestle for AEW uh, one time. you know.
Well, I think, like you said, even if it is just that one time, you kind of get to see what the backstage experiences are like within that company. And then, like you said, you've wrestled for places like MLW and GCW, and you kind of get to see how they operate as well. So then, when you can go back home, then you can kind of see how they promote differently, how they run things differently backstage. So it's all experience, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And funny enough, all this company, although they are all American promotion, they operate so differently.
Mm,
I don't know how to put it in words, but the moment you walk into the backstage, you can already feel the company culture over there.
mm. Right. Okay. Even just walking in, you could just feel it straight away.
Just walk in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Oh, okay. This is a different vibe. This is, I can't put it in words. You have to actually walk in to actually find out. Sometimes, funny enough, even though it's the same people, but then walking into different promotion, the backstage will give you a different vibes.
Mm. We've been lucky enough on this podcast to have people, obviously yourself now from China. We've had Alexis Lee from oh god, I can't think where she's from now.
Singapore.
Singapore, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, Singapore. We've had Super P from the Philippines, and they've all kind of started their own scenes in these different areas, and it's kind of expanding and expanding. And the Southeast Asian scene seems to be getting bigger and bigger, and more eyes are getting shown on it. I've even spoken to somebody who's started up their own magazine series now, See Wrestling, and it's I can't see it on the camera there. It's See
Yeah.
Wrestler. Um,
I don't know they have a hard copy. I only saw it online.
yeah, yeah. So I was actually lucky enough. He sent me a hard copy of it, and
Ooh.
it's a brilliant magazine, and it kind of shows just how much that scene is growing in that part of the world. Where do you think the end goal is for the Southeast Asian scene? You know, how far do you think it can go? And will we start seeing, say, the Philippine scene integrate them with the Chinese scene? You know, can we see it expanding even bigger, do you think?
Absolutely. I think at this moment, Singapore actually did the best amongst all other Southeast Asian country. I'm actually going to Singapore like next week.
Mm.
Wrestle for SPW. Um, I to be honest, I was actually with SPW since their day one,
Right.
2012. Um, 2012, I came back from 01 in Japan. Looking online, and they said there's a Singapore company, wrestling company that just started. I messaged them and tell them, I wrestled in the UK, I wrestled there in Japan, and I promote HKWF. I know how hard it is to promote wrestling in a company in a country that wrestling doesn't exist. Can I come in to help you guys? Andrew, he was the promoter for SPW. He said, "Yeah, come down. I'll figure out your accommodation." That actually means his couch.
Ah.
So I stayed in his house for like 2 months, helped them with some of the training and all that, and we become a good friend since then. And then I wrestle on and off 1, 2 times, 3 times a year for Singapore. I think on and off over the past 10 years, been going to Singapore like 40, 50 times already. They have grown from 100 fans to 500 fans every time. Sometimes 500 fans for 2 days. So it's like 1,000 people, 1,000 ticket they sold per weekend. And it's not cheap. The ticket is like $50, $60, sometimes 80. Um, like dollar, like US dollar.
Wow.
Um, um, they've been doing quite well, and the good thing is all of them speak English, and it's easier for them to be connected with the real world. Um, I mean, um, country like Thailand, Philippines, what else? Malaysia,
Mm.
they do well as well, but not as good as SPW. They could draw 500 every time. Um, um, I like promoter from Thailand and Malaysia. We are all good friends. We talk to each other every month um to check in on what they've been doing. Thailand has been doing great. They have a strong connection with company in Japan. Um, they don't draw as much as Singapore, but 200, 300 is not an issue. Um, this is one of my vision after I came back from NXT is that Southeast Asia is actually a place where we can make it like an American indie. American indie, we have West Coast, we have East Coast, we have the Central area, Chicago, Texas. Each states have their own promotion. So if you are wrestlers and if you work hard enough, you can basically pull off 1 or 2 shows every weekend. And this is the way we are going now in Southeast Asia. One weekend we have a show in Singapore. The other weekend we have a show in Vietnam. The other weekend we have a show in Thailand. This is the pathway that we are going to, and we wanted to do that. Um, and I'm happy that a lot of these promoters trust me enough. I'm not from there, obviously. I'm from Hong Kong, but I live in Japan now, and we are going there. I hope it will take time. It's not something that we can call success immediately.
No.
Wrestling, of course, is new here. Um, People watch WWE, but supporting local wrestling is something else. You know, so it will take time, but eventually, I believe we'll get there.
100%. It does seem to be, from the outside, it does seem to be growing and growing and growing, and you start to hear little bits all the time. So I think it is definitely getting there. Um, but you again, you have like big boom periods in different countries. Like you said, in the UK, we had a big boom period in the mid 2010s, and then it dipped down a little bit, but it's starting to build back up again. We quickly mentioned earlier about your trips to the UK, and you've been coming to the UK since very, very early in your career, and it's something that you've kept up over time. Who did you first get in contact with when you first started coming to the UK?
Yeah, that was the wrestling school in Swindon, 4FW. I actually don't know which one is good and which one is bad. I just go Google it. Um, I, I before I came in, I actually know nothing about the UK scene. I come to UK because um, I can come to UK. So I'm born in Hong Kong, so I'm British.
Mm,
So UK, I speak English as well. Um, so I think, okay, let's go to UK. I know there's some wrestling scene, but I don't know much about the wrestling scene. So I Google it. What is the best wrestling school in the UK? It's in Swindon. It's only an hour and a half away from from where I am in Coventry. So okay, let's go there. 3 times a week, I remember. Do that drive. It's not a motorway drive. It's like an A road drive. I remember.
right.
Uh, so at first it's a little bit scary, coming back at night, 11 p.m. and A road. Sometimes it's so dark. Um, but yeah, so train there and then find out actually this 4FW have they 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 have that vision to connect with promotion in Mexico, promotion in Japan.
Mm,
They have this vision of making their wrestler the star, the best in the UK. Um, and after a few weeks that I train there, I find this out and then I know, okay, this is the place to be. This is a place that would shape my wrestling skill and teach me something new. And they actually did. I remember when I was in 4FW, they have a lot of guests from a lot of places. They have Prince David.
mm,
He called Prince David in the past, Finn Balor. He came in so many times. Um, I actually met Ultimo Dragon for the first time. That was in the UK. That was with 4W. Um, so yeah, that is the and I think those few years in the UK, there are a lot of wrestling company going on. So Swindon, and then in the Midland, they have Fight Club Pro. You remember?
yeah, yeah.
They have Triple X Wrestling, and there's a lot of other things going on. Um, I did another UK trip again, 2013, and I almost get booked like every week. I remember that. There's a lot of stuff going on there.
That's it. It seems to be if you come to the UK, there will be a different show every week around an area, so you can get to hit different cities and things. I remember when you came to the UK once, you appeared for Attack Pro Wrestling, which is
Yeah, Attack.
very different again. We recently had Mark Andrews on the show. He's from Wales as well. They've got their own training school now. Based in Wales, New Wave Academy, and they're starting to branch out again now. So they've got Wild Boar, Flash Morgan Webster, all those have come together now and they're starting their own school, which is good for Wales as well. So kind of the same deal. They're kind of using their exposure that maybe they got from NXT UK, and they're bringing it back home now to kind of build up their own scene here as well, just like yourself.
Yeah, I mean, Flash Morgan, Mark Andrew, Pete Dunne,
Yeah.
Tyler Bate. I remember we all started around the same time, 2011, something like that. So Trent Seven as well.
Mm.
We all Yeah, that's a really good year. You know, I came in when everybody is young and nobody know who we are, and then oh, coming to this stage, I mean, this is something that hard work.
Yes. So now in 2025, where do you see yourself going within the next couple of years now? Do you think it's still going to be more as a wrestler, or do you think it's going to go more down the promoting with Dragon Gate and kind of the play-by-play commentary side now?
Yeah, I've been in dragongate for the fifth year now, and
Mhm.
it's coming to the 6 years now. And um, I still wrestle. You know, wrestling in Japan would it it's a good environment for people who want to wrestle in Japan. You know, um, but I mean, my strength is in more promoting stuff, stuff like that. So I think in the future, you know, this year after the Dragon Gate USA show, we've already planned for next year. We'll do a bigger Dragon Gate USA
Mm.
tour. It might be in a few cities. This year we only do it in Las Vegas because this where WrestleMania is. But next year we might be planning to do something like a West Coast run or East Coast run, and then going to WrestleMania again in New Orleans. So there's a lot of ideas throwing around in the office. Um, but then promoting Dragon Gate in the USA or overseas would be my primary responsibility for the next for the future.
Quickly before we let you go, during that WrestleMania week when Dragon Gate USA got to perform within Las Vegas, did you get to see any of the other companies that came into Las Vegas at that time? You know, did you kind of get to see how different they were to Dragon Gate?
Actually, yeah. You know, there's a lot of company. It's WrestleMania weekend, so everybody came
Mm.
in. Um, we actually have some female talents from Stardom actually wrestling on our show, so their president was here as well. I met them a few times, and then there's another female promotion, Marvelous.
Mm.
We were there working the same show, same day. Just happy to see Japanese talents um doing well in the US. And also, you know, um during this trip, wrestle for some of the main independent wrestling company in the US, Defy, GCW, Prestige, um, Deadlock, DPW. We didn't work with them this year, but Deadlock is cool. We work with each other since they first started in 2020. So happy to see them again. Um, yeah, I mean, WrestleMania weekend is good for the fan, but also I think it's a good um kind of a convention,
Mm.
a business convention stuff where you can meet a lot of old friends, where you can explore new opportunities with different partners. Um, actually take away a lot of stuff, you know, other than the promotion that we work with. I also meet some new companies. FSW in Vegas. I actually visit their training facility after the WrestleMania weekend, and there's some stuff that we talk about that might be able to work something out next year. So it's a great trip this year.
Uh, Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. You know, we got to go through a lot of different things throughout the career, and you know, hopefully, Dragon Gate, you know, is going to keep, or Dragon Gate USA, sorry, is going to keep expanding and expanding, and hopefully, we can see more tours and things like that coming up in the near future. But thank you so
Yeah,
much for coming on.
hopefully, Dragon Gate UK as well in the future.
Yes, that's what we need. That's what we need. And then thank you so much for coming on today. Stay on the line. We'll do a proper goodbye in a moment, and we'll close out the show here today. Guys, another amazing interview on the channel here today. As always, leave a like, comment, and subscribe down to the channel. We're up to 3,714 subscribers now. Let's keep it going up and up if possible. Leave down some comments down below what you thought of the interview, and hopefully, guys, you'll keep watching things like Dragongate, obviously. But like we said, we're mentioning the magazine that I've got in my hand here, the Sea Wrestling. Keep checking out all these different promotions from all around the world, because you never know when we're going to meet these new stars and all these new wrestlers and these new scenes. That you'll know how much I love interviewing these wrestlers to try and find out these little new scenes that I didn't know much about before. But as always, guys, look after yourselves. Peace, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye, guys.